The Amazing Spider-Man series was an ambiguous reboot to the Sam Raimi Spider-Man trilogy, and this series was hated by critics, loved by few, and just kind of a series to the rest of us. And we always knew that there was a sequel planned for The Amazing Spider-Man 2. The Amazing Spider-Man 3 was, of course, in the works, but we never actually got very far into that and seeing what The Amazing Spider-Man 3 could have been. This is where I step in. As you all know, I've been going over recently canceled movies and concepts out of movies, and The Amazing Spider-Man series actually is one series that, unpopular opinion of mine, I actually love. So I figured this was a great opportunity to actually talk about The Amazing Spider-Man series as a whole, and so that's what I'm going to do. So, given that I actually really enjoy this series, there's going to be a lot of spoilers for this series, just straight up, and this is something I love to death and actually would want to watch with someone if they were to be like, hey, what's a Spider-Man movie that I can get interested in? I would start you with actually the Amazing Spider-Man films, because you need nothing else MCU, nothing else movie-wise, and nothing else altogether to watch the Amazing Spider-Man series. But let's start off with The Amazing Spider-Man. And, this film is a very different reboot to the Spider-Man series. It takes villains that we've not seen before, the Lizard, and tries to create a compelling and interesting character piece for Spider-Man, and at the same time introduce a bunch of new characters, introduce some of the same characters, and try to get that bad taste of Spider-Man 3 out of your mouth. It did a successful job at that in 2012, and was like, everyone at the end of it was like, you want to know what, this film wasn't too bad, maybe we need to build upon it. So that's what they did going into The Amazing Spider-Man 2. Now, The Amazing Spider-Man 2 picks up a little bit of time after all of that happened, and The Amazing Spider-Man 2 is a cluster of a film, to be honest with you. It has a lot of things at the same time in the same place. It's a very cluster film. There's a lot of villains, there's a lot of characters, there's a lot of things they're trying to set up for in the future that in the end just kind of fall flat. And I know what you're thinking. You just said, or I just said, that I really enjoyed this series, and I do. But part of enjoying a series is admitting that there are flaws with that series and admitting that there are things that probably need to be improved upon. And one of the things I look upon to be improved upon was the overall storytelling of The Amazing Spider-Man 2. Now, there were a lot of interesting parts of this movie I actually really enjoyed. The carrying over of the death of Gwen Stacy arc is actually one of my favorite things in cinematography. The hand and the webs, it's just such an interesting character piece. Now, the Green Goblin was kind of a miss for me, didn't totally love that. Electro was cool though, I'll give Jamie Foxx that. Not a bad choice for an Electro. Definitely a character that I wouldn't have put in the film, but I wouldn't have put the Lizard in the film. So they're trying to, get me interested in these lesser-known rogues gallery, if I do say so myself, of Spider-Man. And then the last villain, of course, was Paul Giamatti's Rhino. And so Rhino was there. He kind of showed up for some of the film and kind of had the tease at the end of the film where he's there or whatever. So where would The Amazing Spider-Man 3 actually have picked up? It would have picked up hopefully directly after The Amazing Spider-Man 2 ended, where Spider-Man sings a sewer grave right into Rhino's horn, and they've been battling ever since. So we need to know how this battle finishes. After all, Rhino was confirmed to be carried over to the next film. Speaking of characters being carried over to the next film, this would have been far and few in between, as Spider-Man, Paul Giamatti's Rhino, Green Goblin, and possibly Aunt May would have been the only 4 really returning characters for this Spider-Man movie. We don't know how much time would have passed if there would have been a time jump after that, if we've actually seen that battle finish, but those are the only 4 pretty much confirmed returning characters. No filming of this film ever began. Pre-production hadn't even really begun, it just kind of started to work up, but it was going to be announced at a press conference, so, it was working to being an actual film. So, new characters then. If there are only going to be 4 returning old characters, there has to be a few new characters. So, new characters would have included Mysterio, hopefully, Venom to set up his Venom solo film, and as well as other members of the Sinister Six, such as Vulture, Dr. Octopus, and potentially Kraven the Hunter, all of which would have been excellent choices, mind you. J. Jonah Jameson was also rumored for a return, and J.K. Simmons himself even confirmed that he was in talks at one point to return for this iconic role that he had played in the Sam Raimi Spider-Mans. That would have been a little confusing for some moviegoers, but would have been awesome for us diehards that actually really think he was an amazing J. Jonah Jameson. So, here's the thing. Not a whole lot's known about this film, and not a lot's known about the story of this film. Here's what we do know. Spider-Man would have probably been moving on from Gwen Stacy and moving into his love interest with Mary Jane. So, most likely he would have been getting over Gwen Stacy. You know, maybe Gwen Stacy shows up in some type of flashbacks, kind of there, haunting him a little bit. And then the rest of the story is kind of unknown. We don't know if Green Goblin would have continued as his antagonist-type lead. We don't really know what would have happened. But here's what we do know, is that Spider-Man was considered having a new ability, and that was accidentally, or maybe even potentially, bringing characters back from the dead, which happens in comic books all the time. But Spider-Man doesn't really have that power, so I'm not totally sure how that would have worked. However, the Amazing Spider-Man series was its own incarnation and its own trial and error process, so maybe they could have found a way for it to work, but there's no way of ever really telling. And we don't really even know where it would have left us going into these next films. Hopefully they've set up that Venom solo film well, hopefully they've continued to set up things that are important, but we don't know. Now, the Amazing Spider-Man series as a whole wasn't that positively received. I'm in the minority saying that this film was good. And I say that because I actually enjoy films, and I enjoy it, and I admit the flaws that are with this film, and with both of the films, to be honest with you, but I wanted to see more, and that's the thing. I always want to see more. I want to know what happened to these scripts, and I want to know what happened to these characters, because they took the time at one point to set it all up. Shouldn't we have a conclusion? I petition that one day we should start the Amazing Spider-Man 3 comic book. The comic book going ahead and wrapping up the characters from the Amazing Spider-Man 1 and 2 and wrapping them all up into a neat little bow. And if you care enough to see what that series or what that could potentially look like, I have every intention of go ahead and sharing that video with you, and that will be a video in the near future. But that's it for me. This is going to be Daktron, myself, signing out. Until next time.